influential conservationists. Rupert Christopher Lavery was born at West Yarmouth, Devon, on the 2nd of May 1937, and educated at Radley and Trinity College, Cambridge. He attended the Royal Agricultural College, Cirencester, before beginning a career in estate management, finally taking over the family farm from his father in 1970. He was a Fellow of the Linnean Society and a member of the Royal Corinthian Yacht Club, but was seldom seen on the water. Rupert Lavery married, in 1965, Rosalind Bennett, who predeceased him. He is survived by a son. Kit folded the paper so that he could no longer see the obituary. An insistent ping accompanied the illuminated "Fasten Seatbelts" sign, and the 747 tilted slowly to reveal through the small oval window the sprawl of London. Now it was grey, with only the muddy ribbon of the Thames to guide the aircraft towards Heathrow. He would stay just long enough to sort things out. A few weeks, maybe a month, perhaps 2. Had he known what lay ahead of him, he would have transferred his baggage to a Qantas flight and headed straight back to Balnunga Valley. He had completely underestimated the ladies, but then he hadn't met any of them yet. Chapter 2. Earth Gall, Centaurium Minus. Kit took a bus to Reading, then a train to Totnes. He gazed out of the windows of the railway carriage, reacquainting himself with the countryside into which he'd been reluctantly plunged. Anything less like the landscape of southeast Australia would be hard to imagine. The brightly painted clapboard houses of his adopted settlement had been replaced by damp brickwork. The names of the stations, Taunton and Tiverton Parkway, Exeter St David's and Dawlish, were all exquisitely, stultifyingly English. The clean white fences of the stud farm in Balnunga Valley had been replaced by posts and rails of dark brown, and by leafless hedges of increasing height and thickness as the train rattled on through Newton Abbot. By the time the grubby carriages trundled into Totnes, Kit felt world-weary and bone-achingly tired. Doors thumped and slammed, the vibration fizzing through his head. He heaved the single weighty suitcase from between the seats and shambled off the train and on to the windswept platform. A female passenger passed him, smiling sympathetically at his apparent bewilderment, his tanned face marking him out as a foreigner on unfamiliar ground. Devon in February. The air nipped at his nostrils, and he pulled the inadequately insulated jacket around him to keep out the sudden rush of cold. A handful of grubby litter swirled in a sudden eddy at his feet, and he looked along the platform for the exit. Elizabeth Punch had offered to pick him up at the station, but he'd said that he'd make his own way to the farm. He couldn't be sure that his flight would arrive on time, and he didn't want her to be hanging about. That had been only half true. The thought of sharing a journey with someone he'd never met, but who'd lived and worked with his father for the last 10 years, filled him with apprehension. He'd tried to imagine what she looked like from their brief, crackly telephone conversation across the world. She'd sounded matter-of-fact, and there was little trace of emotion in her voice, which surprised him. He was unsure of the nature of her relationship with his father, knowing only that she'd worked with him on the reserve since just after his own departure, and that his father, whenever they'd corresponded or spoken on the phone, had never suggested that this was anything more than a working association. Perhaps Rupert had been attempting to spare his son's feelings. Perhaps not. For a moment, Kit wondered where to go. The station, once so familiar, now seemed completely foreign. The exit sign swung squeakily in the breeze, and his head swam, a combination of jet lag and tiredness. "Come on," he said to himself, and walked